Indie News Network.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Wow, Peter
got
Coffin and
something ready?
Indie News Network. What is this, a crossover episode? I had to. I'm sorry. I had to.
Yeah, I guess it is. I guess
Crossover
it is. Yeah.
Wow, that's really
Those of
good.
you who don't know, if you're not already subscribed, Peter Coffin is the author of very important docs. And if you haven't seen it already, the latest drop has been Horseshoe Theory. I just had it up.
Horseshoe Theory is right, but not how you think.
Not how you think.
Well, the reason why it's not how you think is because people make it about something completely different. They make it about how one is better than the other, rather than bringing it down to material relationships and asking the question, what do these things physically actually represent?
What would you say was the main inspiration behind this? I did notice you mentioned Aaron Bushnell and like Max Azzarello or not.
Yeah, I mean, they were definitely a big part of it. Like, it did feel like there's a certain malaise that those types of people have, and they aren't in a great place in terms of their lives. Like, we're in a society that's very set up to sort of prevent us from getting anywhere. There's alienation. There's a lot of people are very depressed. I talked about Mark Fisher as well. He tragically killed himself as well, but for not really a reason, just full depression. Like they both had reasons. Maxwell Azzarello posted a manifesto about it. Aaron Bushnell posted a video of it actually happening. And they were good reasons, like they were protesting the right things. It's just something that is ultimately not helpful for that cause. It takes their lives, so they can't accomplish anything towards that cause. It's not that I'm saying they're bad people. They certainly weren't. I would even argue that they were good people and cared about the right things in the world. But I mean, that was part of the inspiration. Another part is I don't know if anyone here has ever seen how I am perceived by leftists in the world.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But it is not as a communist. Most of them think that I'm a covert fascist or a right winger or a racist or any of those numbers of bigotry. And to be frank, I argue with them and I'm like, you know what? Materially speaking, there are class interests at play, and I don't really care about the left right thing. That seems to be distracting you from the thing that will get you to what you want, which, by the way, I'm not even against almost anything those people are for. I mean, I'm certainly against parts of them. Like, I think that there are aspects of their ideology that I don't completely agree with. But I think that everybody should be able to say what they want, be what they want. That goes for identity, that goes for job, that goes for all of these things. And I think that's ultimately what they want. But they just, when I say it's a class issue, all of it is a class issue. They think I'm a class reductionist, and somehow that makes me a Strasserite, which somehow makes me a Nazi and somehow makes me right wing. And I don't know. It's all of that stuff has led me to realize, left and right are not material things. They're idealist things. If you go back to the French Revolution, they're material things because the left represents the left of the National Assembly, the bourgeoisie. The right represents the feudal aristocracy, which their supporters were on the right side of the National Assembly. But ultimately, that side lost and was absorbed by the other side. Like when we talk about the bourgeoisie or the capitalist class now, we don't distinguish it by, I mean, we do when we're talking about certain things, but as a class, we don't distinguish it by if they own productive property or if they own land. I mean, they're still bourgeoisie one way or the other because they're operating it in the capitalist mode. And so to me, that says, all right, the difference between left and right is ideals. And what do ideals do? They're usually an ideological excuse for the capitalist class to do what it wants to do. Whether that is the woke mind virus, as they call it, or whatever the anti-woke mind virus is. I don't know what you call that, but it's also a mind virus. That's a definite thing. These things don't progress any meaningful argument. They actually cement people into these seemingly different viewpoints, which ultimately put us at, let's fight over whether something is good or bad until we're tired, and then we sleep or kill ourselves.
I like, yeah, I
Yeah.
really enjoy how you tied it back to capital, about preserving capital.
Yeah.
And breaking down the history. I mean, like if you haven't seen it yet, but an important thing you mentioned, the Congress for Cultural Freedom.
Yes, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, that do you think you can tie a direct line between that and modern day wokeism? Because it that kind of feels like the entry point of techno fashion, like capitalists to come in and kind of invade the left space. Because I think I'm not sure if that was already problematic at the time.
Well, at the founding of the Congress of Cultural Freedom, I don't want to say that what we would call woke existed then, because it certainly didn't.
No.
That kind of concerned with only cultural issues. There was a left at that time that was that. It just wasn't the prominent left. It was the Social Democrats, the leftists, that various sects of socialism that are more or less, arguing for immediate, spontaneous revolution, stuff that is not going to just happen without organizing or any of those things. Those segments ultimately existed, and they were usually against Marxists, which Marxists, going back a couple of decades before the Congress for Cultural Freedom, gained prominence through the Soviet Union rising to power. And the Soviet Union, in a lot of ways, functioned as a means to, I think, hold, quote unquote, the left accountable, even though it's, for certain ideals, the de facto force against capitalism and all of the things that a leftist would say they don't like was the Soviet Union. So a lot of them kind of did defer to a class analysis, but as the 40s and 50s progressed, there was kind of a change in the perception of what communism was. And they had been doing propaganda for a couple of decades, specifically to damage the reputation of that. But I think you can absolutely draw a line directly from the Congress from Cultural Freedom to wokeism, because some of the larger promoters of wokeism include the Open Society Foundation, George Soros's nonprofit. And if you trace the Congress for Cultural Freedom, after it was abolished in, I think it was 1967, because of being found out by the New York Times and exposed for being a CIA front, it formally detached from the CIA and became funded by the Ford Foundation. And eventually, which it was calling itself, I think, the International International something for Cultural. It still retained the name Cultural Freedom, but it wasn't CIA affiliated at that point, at least not to anybody's knowledge currently. And that was absorbed in 1992 by the Open Society Foundation. So, I mean, I'm not saying that the Open Society Foundation created wokeness, but it did propagate a lot of the ideologies that were developed in the 70s and 80s by academics that sort of, in a lot of ways, you could call the beginnings of wokeness, intersectionality, aspects of, I say aspects of, but I mean queer theory. I'm not against queer people or trans people or anything, but queer theory I am against. I think that is a very reductive and ultimately essentialist form of thinking.
No, there was definitely a direct intention to remove class from feminism. I
absolutely.
Yeah.
I have to say, this stuff is the ultimate proletarian division sort of topic.
I agree.
I see people fighting over this all day and all night, and that can't be by accident. I'm sorry, I'm too cynical. I'm too old to think this is not deliberate. And speaking to your point from earlier, we've gotten all the same labels too.
Yeah.
You're not a real leftist unless you want to, I don't know, wear a mask or 5 billion gender. There's so many qualifiers and check marks. I remember it.
If you vote for Joe Biden, you're a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember it specifically with the Rage Against the War Machine rally last year, and it was just an avalanche of comrades who were just like doing everything they can to smear it based off these like little check marks and purity tests that people seem to fail or whatever. And it's like, this can't be accident. There's no way this is accident,
No.
especially as people's material conditions worsen. You see people from different political leanings kind of organizing to stop things like rampant imperialism, or I was old enough to remember Occupy Wall Street. They kind of deployed some of the same like smear tactics there.
Yes.
It's just
definitely.
like, my God, it shouldn't.
What was that?
A genocide too. Right
Yeah, nah, whatever. Just
I was gonna make that joke.
Move past it. No.
That's my favorite part. Is
That
this
started
argument.
October 7th. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely not before that. Don't look at anything before that. Just October 7. And do you condemn hummus? That's the only two things we want to talk about.
If you don't love that hummus, I just don't know. I don't know why you would even show up to dinner.
I wanted to. I did want to bring that up. I wanted to ask you, like, is we're 12 months into this Gaza genocide. I would view being pro-Palestine as like traditionally like left. What how
same. At least if
Yeah,
you're
I think it is
anti-Semitic. If you're anti-Semitic, I would say you're probably not. You probably hate everybody in that area.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it's like.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, there's one caveat, and that like there's a lot of those people who are taking the criticism of Israel and like coming out of the woodwork, and you're just like, wait, no, we're not.
Yeah.
That's not what we mean. We're criticizing like Zionism in the state, and they're just like, see, I told you the Jews control. Just like, no.
It's like Dennis on Always Sunny in the blackface episode when he's like, I hate it when you're on my side.
That's a great.
Stop it.
So we're 12 months into this, and we've seen weekend after weekend of. I mean, I'm in New York. I see it all the time. It's like every weekend they're out protesting, and the same thing happened with Iraq too. I mean, these large scale protests, they really haven't done anything. I mean, Gaza's done. Gaza's demolished.
Oh yeah, you're talking hundreds of thousands of casualties over.
And it's not coming. That's going to take years to rebuild. And even whoever's going to do that is probably BlackRock and Vanguard and all of these traditional. And who's going to come in after that is all the Israeli settlers who already said they're opening up beachfront properties. Donald Trump, his own son-in-law, is opening up a hotel down there.
Wait, but
it's already over.
But people on the TV told me he's anti-establishment. I'm confused.
Yeah. So
here's the thing about that. I don't like the establishment so much. I'm just the best in terms of Israel.
That's a good impression.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask
I'll probably do it a lot more now that you've given me the go-ahead.
Oh, Lord.
Are we directing action in the wrong way? Like, why? I mean, why do we have comrades killing themselves as opposed to like we're almost running into walls. We're sitting here. We're out there protesting in front of like buildings, getting tear gas and trampled by by cops on horses, and we have fellow comrades that are burning themselves alive.
Yeah,
and none of it has done anything. None of it, nothing has changed. And in fact, it's gotten only worse.
Leftists hate me when I make this reference because apparently it was a right-wing only thing. But we had a successful organization event up here that achieved its desired results.
The truckers?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what they did was they disrupted what? Capital.
That's
and
right.
That's what got it. That's what got it done.
It doesn't matter if they were right. I don't think they actually were.
On your mic's going out for a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Yeah.
I don't think these people were exclusively right wing. I don't think that I don't like, and it doesn't matter. But I don't think to say, well, like every one of these truckers was definitely a right winger. Like I think that's absurd for one. But for two, I don't really give a shit if they're. Or am I allowed to curse? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Okay.
fuck
All right.
balls,
I don't give a shit if they were left or right. The thing that they did was correct. Like that's
Yes.
what worked. And it's just to think that the idea that whatever ideology they have matters in the least when it comes to their material effect. They disrupted capital, and the proof is in the pudding. They got what they wanted. Like that's what you do. And when I see these people talking about free Palestine and they're in the middle of a road sitting, I'm like, you're not disrupting capital. You're disrupting the everyday person. And then some people will say, well, we're disrupting them from going to work and capital needs them. No, capital doesn't. There's a massive labor surplus. Capital can fire that person and get a different person who's going to walk. It's like these people don't think at all about material consequence or effect or even relationship. Like, and the thing is, they'll say that they do. This is to me the problem of the left. They will say, "Oh yeah, I love Karl Marx, I love material analysis. Class is the problem, man." But then it doesn't matter at all in their action. They clearly don't plan action around that principle. They plan action around what's going to piss off the bad other people, like, or even like not even the bad other people, but just the bystander that doesn't even really have a political consciousness of any kind. It's to me just complete nonsense. And to your question, Greg, in terms of why I think we're landing on this suicidal ideology is because, as I said in the documentary, I think there's three places to land. There's suicidal ideology, homicidal ideology, and you see that in various forms. You could bring it to them trying to kill Trump, or bringing it to even the Unabomber, I would say, is an example of where you go without material. When you don't target the actual contradictions of capitalism, the material relationships. When you don't target that, you end up at suicidal, homicidal, or genocidal, like the Nazis. That's degrowth to the extreme. You get the need to get rid of a bunch of people, and eventually capitalism does get to that point because of the what Marx called the crisis of overproduction. I often call it a value crisis because I think overproduction colloquially means something very different now. It means like we're just making too much stuff, and Marx's overproduction is a totally different thing. It's about the falling rate of profit and producing in order to try to maintain profits when nobody has any money in the other class. But I think that we get there because there's a sort of puritanism in terms of what we have to do, like in the leftists' minds. And this is the sort of, let's call it a revolutionary terminating cliche. We just talked about how these quote unquote, at least in the leftist eyes, right wing truckers getting what they attempted to get by disrupting capital, but they were right wing, so they were bad. So we can't work with them. We can't do anything. All right, well, your class analysis is out the window right there. You're done with it. You don't even care about class because those people and all of the apolitical people that they hate so much, those are the people that you need to organize with. Those are the people with the same material interests as you. Maybe not the same job or the same opinion, but like ultimately the relationship between owner and not owner. You're on the same side of that line with those people, and you need to figure out how to at least exist with those people and work with those people. You don't have to like them. I don't need to like any of these. I as much as I find like Donald Trump, for instance, very, very funny. I enjoy listening to him talk. I don't like Donald Trump. I don't think
I don't
that
agree
he's.
with any. Yeah, I don't agree with any of it.
Yeah, no, there's not. I mean, sometimes he'll say something that diagnostically is correct, but he will never offer the correct solution.
No.
So he sent javelin missiles to Ukraine. He wants to go bomb Iran.
And that's kind of
possible.
That's kind of a material class ignorance from a lot of people too. I see these people who are like, this billionaire, he definitely, like, this billionaire who was born into wealth and his dad forked over hundreds of millions of dollars to keep him from bankrupting a casino, and he did it fucking anyway. Yeah, he's got our best interests at heart. He speaks to my needs, and it's like,
Sure.
guys,
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm going to be completely frank, I do appreciate the idea of attempting to talk to North Korea, but also like that's one out of how many of his foreign policy, like he's lately been talking about,
He
like
makes attempts.
starting.
Like he attempted to make peace in the Middle East. It wasn't good, but like
Yeah.
he
I
at least he
appreciate
tried.
the idea at very least, but an idea is not ultimately a result. It is, again, if you're talking about the difference between classes, his ultimate interests do not. I mean, maybe his immediate interests don't actually involve war, and he's really only thinking that way. But his ultimate interests, the end game, war is really something that they have to do, because eventually you do have to address the crisis of overproduction, and you either have to do it via people self-selecting out against suicide, like the MAID program up there that you guys have, which is
real good. Love it.
Yeah.
I've talked a lot about that on I have a show, The Maple Files, which does
Right.
all Canada stuff.
They do.
And it's
It's a
weird.
great name.
We've got the moose is out there anyway.
But
we-
to bring up like this
we-
like left conversation, like that, I thought that this is included in the doc, but like this is a very like I haven't seen this until I saw the documentary, but
Yeah, the thing is, both of these guys are, of course, evil. Louis C.K. Masturbates in front of people, and Shane Gillis doesn't hate, all of the right people. He swooped in and took the sponsorship from Dylan Mulvaney, I guess, from the Bud Light. I guess
We
that
also-
makes sense too.
we also don't know if
that
he
Louis says
masturbates
here-
in front of people or not. That's
Yeah, he could masturbate in front of people, but like
they could all
he
masturbate in
made
front
a
of
good
each other.
comeback
We don't
though.
know.
He made a decent comeback. I mean,
Yeah.
I think he did it. I mean, it's not like he raped someone. I mean,
no. If I'm serious, like I don't give a shit about that.
I
at
don't
all.
really even. Yeah, I don't even really care. I
Like,
always
I
thought it was
think
funny. I thought it was legendary.
gross, but like there's
Weird.
a pretty fair amount of
Definitely weird.
evidence that
Very
a
weird.
lot of those people were not necessarily coerced in any way to be part of that. And it's sure, like there are power dynamics. I'm not going to pretend there aren't. But I don't know if you've ever listened to Sarah Silverman talk about the time he did it in front of her. She basically was like, all right. Like, I feel like a lot of people get into situations like that, not just with Louis C.K. or masturbating, but even just like a bad date or something. They turn it around and the guy's suddenly evil instead of just unbearable,
Yeah, it sounds more
Yeah.
awkward and weird than like.
I agree. I don't like it.
And not
I mean,
The things that Louis says about the left here, I thought were really like hard hitting.
really
They
know
are-
what we
Come
got.
sorry, you go ahead.
And it's such a mess over on the Democrat side, but it can't be these guys who are just pushing whatever button that day. I'm going to go against the liberals on this because that's what they're mad about today. It's got to be somebody who goes back to just regular. And I don't want a conservative president, but I believe I live in a democracy and that the president should only sometimes reflect my values, because I'm a part of the country. I'm not the whole country.
Yeah.
So if I lived in a country where I love the president my whole lifetime, that would be fucked up because I only agree with about 38% of the people in the country.
Yeah.
So that's, to me, the what is the test of what a president should be? Is it that he should be compassionate, strong, all these? To me, what he should be is a representative of the people's will. Remember this thing that I said, he is a president. He presides. Like when they talk about, like real intellectuals talk about it and real press guys, they say you are president. They don't say you're the president. They say you're president. And Obama used to say, when it comes to president, he didn't say he would say president, because it's a verb. You're presiding. Like I said, it's a simple job. Trump always talks about leader. When you're a leader, you're not a leader. You're not a ruler. You are presiding over a process. You're presiding over a process of equals deciding things together. You're supposed to be just one of the people who was chosen to step up and run shit for a while, being told by this group of all we also voted for, what to do. That's what the legislators, and then these 9 people who are looking after making sure that it's supposed to result in the right thing and keeping the tiller in the right direction.
Yeah.
But it's a humble position. That's why I don't think it belongs to a guy like him. I think it's fascinating that he took it for those, and they win. It makes them stronger. I mean, Clinton proved that. It's just so fucking stupid.
If it wasn't for COVID, he'd still be there.
I don't know. It's hard to say. He really was running hot, and he didn't give a fuck. And that's just something's going to get you. Same with Nixon. Same with Caligula. Just something that you left because you didn't care. Same that shoots so high, but it burns and you start to take a dump into the ground.
Yeah, the left part is somewhere over here.
The thing on the left is they have no.
There we go.
Yeah, we're getting
about
there.
Trump is that he had no respect for democratic process. To me, the thing on the left is they have no respect for liberty. This America is about democracy and liberty. Okay, it's about that we choose amongst ourselves and that there's a working, fair democracy. And it's about you can say what you want, you can believe what you want, you can be who you want, you can have the identity you want, you can be anything you want, and no one and the great American ideal is leave people the fuck alone. That's the one they forget. It's not about like say this, say that. It's about leave folks alone. Let people do what they want. And the left forgot that. They don't give a fuck about freedom of speech anymore. They don't get how stupid it is to shut people up and how quickly that's going to come around and kick you in the ass. Same thing with Trump. If you just wield authority like this, say fuck democracy, no one's going to have your back.
Yeah.
No one's going to be there to make sure you're doing the right thing like the press is supposed to do and doesn't do anymore. So that's, to me, the two sides have fucked up those two principles.
And that the problem is both those sides are correct to point the finger at the other side.
Yes, that's
and
why
be
it's
like, this is why we're fucked up. That's why we're fucked up.
That's
and they
why
just won't stop.
That's why it becomes a looking glass, because they don't understand each other. And yes, they are right about each other.
Yeah, they're right.
They're right about each other. The left is right about Trump. Trump's right about the left, and all the people that are left, And so it's a mess. But the thing I count on is just human spirit, human nature, which is that we like each other. I think and we like to laugh at each other.
This right here is exactly where he goes wrong. Like some of the stuff he's talking about the president presiding and not being a leader. I also think that's kind of wrong because, I mean, you're ultimately like the big guy. You kind of are a leader by default, but that's not even concerning to me. He's completely right.
Left part, but.
He is completely right with this left stuff because it completely understands the culture war. It completely understands where it's getting, and then he does exactly what you do when you don't have material analysis. He goes, I gotta rely on the human spirit, man.
Yeah,
and that's
it always goes back to human nature. I feel like human nature is like the placeholder. If you're working with an integer in programming, it's like the placeholder for material analysis a lot of the time. They insert human nature, and it's like, okay. Well,
the thing is, they don't have material analysis, but they need something material to go to. So it has to be a mystical thing that they transform in their mind into something material. Human nature is malleable. It's all hell. Like the conditions around us shape human nature. Like it's not even close to like a thing that is like in our genetics. Genetically, people are just greedy, and you got enough people who want something, and they end up starting to take it from everybody. It's like no, that stuff. It's all part of trying to live in a world that is set up the way that we are set up. It is us trying to come up with how on earth do you survive or even thrive in this world that is built to only allow some of us to survive and thrive. It's a question and an answer rather than some kind of intrinsic thing. If you had a different situation, people would react differently. I don't see even how that's not common sense personally, but that they need to be able to transform something into material. And so something like human nature or essentialism or bigotries, like when they say anti-Semitism is the socialism for fools, it's referring exactly to this. They're trying to find something that can be looked at as material to justify the thing that they're thinking.
I like there's a point in the doc you said, the documentary, you said the left is like emotional abuse and the right is physical abuse.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty perfect analogy.
I appreciate that a lot because I say that from some experience in my life. I've experienced emotional abuse, and it's very, very difficult to even convince yourself that you're being abused in some way. And it comes from that experience. I don't know if you remember when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars because of his wife. He was laughing at Chris Rock's joke, looked over, and she's like, and he gets up and turns psychotic. It's because he has to prove that he's not the bad guy. Chris Rock is the bad guy. I'm on your side. That's a symptom of somebody who's abused. I said something about it when it happened, and absolutely everybody freaked out over it. And then it turned out to be completely right. Shocking, I know. But there's a certain degree of being unable. There's a paralysis that comes along with emotional abuse that isn't present with physical abuse. A lot of people, and I'm not saying this isn't, I'm not trying to universalize anybody's experience with any abuse, but I generally find when I've spoken to somebody who's experiencing emotional abuse, they have a big problem accepting it themselves, and they also have a big problem saying this needs to change, or it's usually apologetics. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen with physical abuse. It does. But if somebody goes into work with a black eye and it's obvious that they're being beaten by their spouse or something, that is, I mean, externally, people are like, that person's being beaten by their spouse. They figure that out very quickly and very easily. Whereas if somebody comes in and starts talking about a bunch of I guess esoteric almost points about their own personal lives that don't make any sense without any context, nobody believes there's abuse going on. And that's why they often don't even bother justifying it to themselves or telling other people, because they feel like, this is going to sound completely nuts if I am complaining about this. And I feel like that's what the left is like, because ostensibly a lot of my goals and end games are very similar to what a leftist would say. But I mean, the thing that they want, the thing that they'll do, the thing, if you remember after January 6th, this is going to get me in trouble because anytime I mention January 6th, I get people angry at me. But this is true. I would have the same criticism as a lot of people would if they just call it a riot as opposed to what is it?
An insurrection.
Insurrection.
Yes, insurrection is the word I was looking for.
Shooting on Nancy Pelosi's desk is not an insurrection.
No, it's not an insurrection. It's a riot, and I do have criticism for people who are rioting and destroying stuff. That doesn't actually.
That's another example of not targeting capital.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah,
exactly.
Across the board, I condemn defecating in someone's place of work. They have to, that's not nice.
I mean, on the flip side, destroying a target because somebody was killed. Did that change anything about that death or the police system? Absolutely not. It's not targeting capital, and it's kind of targeting unrelated capital. In fact, it's just something literally targeting. I didn't just realized I'm using the word target to talk about target. Sorry, ADHD. It happens.
It does all the time here.
Yeah. But I feel like the thing that what I talk about when I get to that is all of the anarchists who are so happy to turn in anybody, including they're if my family member was there, I would turn them in. And there were liberals who were turning in people who had been there, who were in their families, who were just to the FBI, happily handing over this information when they're aware that the FBI is against what they ostensibly want. They're aware that the FBI would just let's say they were doing some kind of leftist protest and similar things happened. They would be arrested. They would be behind bars. They would be used as propaganda as, look at how bad the left is. Look at how bad these guys are. And the thing is, when you get into talking about the
Remember
way
when Marjorie Taylor Greene said abolish the FBI?
Yes.
They want to abolish and they all jumped on her for that.
Yes, they were very happy to say, no, the FBI is good. The FBI, I mean, they did some bad things back in the 60s and 70s, but I mean, that was back then, and they've
CIA is
disclosed.
good now. They don't do anything bad.
There's no way they're still doing that because they told us they were doing that, and that means they're obviously not stopping, which, hey, there's that emotional abuse coming back. Like, doesn't that sound exactly like emotional abuse? The CIA, they told us they were doing bad things. They opened up all of the paperwork about it. They showed us the evidence. And they said, you know what? We're not doing anything like that anymore because we know that's bad, right? I wouldn't do that to you again, Boo. You know?
Oh, don't worry. He's changed. Same
exactly.
energy.
Yes, he's changed energy is exactly what we're talking about with the CIA and all of the shit they did, like COINTELPRO. It's all he's changed energy.
And a lot of the left is already based on like a lot of like moral grandstanding and like virtue signaling. It's all like morality based, kind of like, or like, are you a good person kind of thing? Or like, as the right is like, it's more property focused, like individual, but even nowadays, like with the rise of Trump, like you kind of briefly mentioned this too, where like you're seeing the right kind of bring up, or at least like put more value onto like more like humanistic like principles, or like at least like more class based. Like I would say being anti-war is like class based. I don't know if you would say that the right is like quote unquote anti-war, but like they are based on like more like class based issues, like freedom of health and freedom of personal liberty, voting. Like our voting system's actually fucked, and that's a concern that's primarily on the right.
Yeah, no, so, like, I mean, if you even talk about the voting system as bad, you are a right winger. Like that's enough to make you a fascist. Like you say the democracy is not working as it should. Somehow that means you're a Trump voter, or I think I don't remember who's the conservative guy up there. I don't remember his name. He's kind of not Trumpish in rhetoric, but like that
PP.
sort of PP.
Call him PP.
Yeah,
I call him Milhouse because he just
I don't remember if I had him in the documentary because he said something. No, I didn't put him in this documentary. It was in Marks for Sale. I put him in because he was saying something that sounds like a leftist would care about. And I was kind of using that as an example. I think in Marks for Sale, which was a documentary from last year. In terms of, the right being anti-war, in some ways it sort of makes them a little bit like the 60s left, as Jordan Peterson might say. The second part of the documentary, I covered that interview between Jordan Peterson and Destiny. And they also, just like Louis, although I'll say Louis, in my opinion, is closer to getting it than they are. But they are also, the thing I appreciated from both Peterson and Destiny in that interview is that there is an actual intellectual curiosity, which is something you never see between a right-wing influencer and a left-wing influencer. And somebody will be like, nah, Destiny's not a left-wing influencer. He's also a right-wing influencer. No. And this is the no true Scotsman fallacy that we deal with not just leftists, but people calling themselves communists as well. Everything's not real communism. And with the right, I guess we do also get it's not real or capitalism. Sorry,
we don't have true capitalism now. It's a mix of
It's a mix of capitalism and
socialism. They'll call this communism. What's happening right now? Yeah. They'll call this communism.
Yes.
PP is currently like literally. I covered this. One of the 8th richest person in Canada has a sign in front of his house now calling our left party, the NDP, communist. They're like center.
They're going off on Comrade Kamala. That's a talking about.
Just
Kamala, she's going to go ahead and destroy democracy. We're going to be in a total socialist, communist, fascist, totalitarian. It's all going to happen, and it's all from that side.
That's one hell of a multi-class. I just like to say socialist, fascist, communist. And I love how he just rattles them off. These aren't like even things in his head.
No,
he's just like,
he doesn't know what those things are.
Just birdshot words. I think he legitimately thinks like these idiots aren't going to Like nobody's gonna push back.
Oh yeah,
on the
he doesn't care. Like he's not saying anything that he cares about. He's just like, I know that these people, they don't know what any of this stuff is, so it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, pretty much.
But the other thing I was going to say was it's not just that they use communism or a compilation of capitalism and communism. There's a lot of them that also they do this is corporate capitalism or corporatism.
Cronyism.
Crony capitalism is a big one. I've probably heard that more than corporatism. But yeah, I mean, they just make up a new word to.
I always argue like
Peter.
No, that's capitalism.
Like,
if you put an adjective back, it said I lost connection.
I always argue like,
but
yeah, I see now.
Yeah.
Okay. So they just put a word in front of capitalism, and they think that makes it different. And I say in this documentary, I say, look, I don't say that this wasn't real communism. I don't. I have no, like, I agree that things went wrong in the Soviet Union. Like, it doesn't exist anymore, so something clearly didn't work. I don't agree with the Cultural Revolution in China. I think the current Chinese government also doesn't agree with it. So, I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with admitting that every giant social system has serious problems, especially in an implementation that is imperfect and not really the end game. Like, we're not talking about China being the end game or the USSR being the end game. We're talking about, what is the contradiction? How are we trying to solve it? Those two countries tried to solve it. Like, that's the difference between me and somebody who's going to say the no true Scotsman's fallacy about communism. But also, I expect that somebody who would allow me to say those things and still support communism, to say, all right, well, I guess crony capitalism, I guess corporate capitalism, I guess corporatism, or any of these numbers of things, they're also capitalism. And you know what? They have actually more atrocities than communism by a lot.
more.
Because every large atrocity of the overarching social and economic system is of capitalism.
Well, the thing that I argue with is they always do the 8 guerrillian deaths under Stalin, Mao, Zilla, whatever they're doing. I'm shocked how many people do not. Holodomor, always got to throw the Holodomor out there.
Love the Holodomor. That's not just a famine
shocked.
or anything.
Yeah, I'm shocked how many people I have to educate where I'm like, you realize there was a drought that actually killed a shitload of Russians, right? And they're like, no. And I'm like, yes. What do you think the famine... I get the kulaks, I get that argument. Collectivization was hard, sure. But to just ignore a massive drought that caused catastrophic crop failure, we're not looking at this in the same lens at all. It's not like Stalin was twirling his mustache and being like, I'm gonna do a drought today. We're not the way I look at it is as such. In psychology, sorry, I'm gonna psych nerd out for a second. In psychology, there is a specific term for black and white thinking. It's called splitting. And it's when you are unable to see any middle ground between 2 points. Everything has to be either a 1 or a 0. And everybody, I feel, when it comes to stuff like communism, they fall into this trap where they're going, this had problems, therefore it's bad, we can't use it. Whereas I think the correct way of looking at these systems is to go, okay, what did the USSR get right? Well, it lifted millions of people out of poverty, and not for nothing for all the people that said it failed, but it went from a largely agrarian country to an economic superpower that windmill dunked on a fascist dictator in decades. That's a W, that's not an L.
Let's not forget the space program.
Yeah, the space program.
I mean, they beat the United States of America into space. They just flat out handed us our asses. And depending on who you talk to, I don't believe this. I believe in the moon landing, but there's a lot of people that don't believe in the moon landing, on the right, I might add, that don't think about the fact that the Soviets were much more advanced in that entire thing, that we had to throw. If you don't believe in it, we didn't throw trillions or billions of dollars at it. But if you do believe in it, we threw tons and tons of money at beating them. And it became like our biggest priority as a country to beat the Soviets in the space race, which is
JFK ran on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's because
ridiculous.
It's because it wasn't just a space race. For them, it was like, our ideology is backing this. Our ideology, American values, has to beat the communist ideology, because we can't let these dirty proles look at any alternative to the shit we got going on right now, because our paymasters can't have that. You can't provide an alternative to this system of systemic exploitation.
Absolutely.
But I was gonna say, they beat America so bad they had to fake the moon landing.
There's so many like quote unquote like socialist, like communists these days, who like think their idea of like a communist society is like no one works and like no one has a job, which is like totally the opposite of the case. I mean, and look, like communism, like no social system is supposed to be. It's not going to be perfect because nothing is perfect, and like China is not perfect. There's definitely problems with China, and China, even even what they call it is communism with Chinese characteristics.
Yes,
it's not traditional. It's not like what people would call traditional communism, but they, 70% of millennials own houses. They lifted millions of people out of poverty. They have huge production value. They have one of the largest economies in the world.
So they'll pulling up children.
They will be the biggest economy eventually. They're on the way up. Like their goal is up, and they care about lifting people. I mean, even if let's say it's for bad reasons, they care about getting people into houses. They care about not having people in poverty. Let's say it's for some evil reason that it's just to beat the West. Let's say it's their space race.
They're building
fine.
Africa. They're building.
Oh yeah, exactly. It just translates into people's material conditions improving, and to put heaps of narrative on top of that, it's like all the articles where it's like China did this base thing, but at what cost?
Yeah.
At what cost?
They think building stuff for other countries is imperialism.
Yeah.
It's because like I don't know if you guys have played any Sid Meier games before, but
I have, but it has been since the 90s that I've played any of these city builders. Well, no, I take that back. I've played them recently.
So for those who aren't familiar, it's like Sid Meier's games are like Civilization. You try and win essentially by you can achieve victory in different areas. So you can win by total domination, which is you just take over the whole world. Guess we know what players in the world today doing that. And then you can win like diplomatic, economic victory. China is just trying to win via a different route than America's trying to win, than the Western Empire is trying to win. Western Empire is trying to win like through domination. China's trying to win through like economic and
cooperation.
Diplomatic victory. Because if everybody's an ally, everybody's working together, there's no competition anymore. Everybody's just working together. We can go explore Alpha Centauri and whatever.
I have a conservative friend that I'm constantly talking to about China, because that seems to be his sort of pet, like, you like China and China's bad, So I always bring up, one of the arguments he loves to bring up is, you brought it up, is them building in Africa. In his opinion, that is just like, you can't say it's bad that we're building in Africa with China, your precious communists building in Africa. It's like, well, here's the thing. We don't build there just to build there. We build there to own there. Like, that's what we're trying to do there. We want property. We want control. We want, and when I say we, obviously, I mean our state and capital. I don't mean the three present people. But that's what we want out of that. China does not want that. They want independence so that they have somebody else to work with. They don't own property that they build. Like, the intent is not to build something that they have a long-term material interest in outside of their cooperative relationship with these places. And that's a completely different paradigm. And it's just so hard for somebody who thinks about things as business in certain ways to see that. Like his rebuttal to me is always, well, business has to expand. So they're just doing business. And it's like, yes, but also their version of business is not our version of business. It's a different thing. Like their goal is for more entities, whether it be their citizens or other countries that they intend to be able to have a symbiotic relationship with. They want those other entities to succeed as well. And that is very different than our conception of business.
No, for sure. Funny you mentioned that. I have a conservative friend too who's like, I try and connect the dots for him where I'm like, dude, they're not even doing new propaganda. They took the McCarthyite era propaganda, they just replaced a name and then they just fed it back to you, and that's
made it
what
shittier too, honestly. Like it's not as good. Like it used to be more convincing.
Yeah, now it's just like, now they're literally just like, oh, but what about like social credit score? And I'm like, you have a social credit score right now, motherfucker.
It's called
It's
your
just
credit
not. Yeah, it's your credit score. And worse, it's based just on how poor you are. You lose rights for no other reason.
Well, that's the thing. They don't make the connection. Like your social status is your economic status. Just never, it doesn't click. And that I'm not even talking about right-wing people there. I'm talking about everybody there. Every United States citizen, not every, but like all of these leftists, they think the same thing. It's not like when I've had leftists come at me with the social credit argument, like we can't do China because they have social credit. It's like, all right, well, cool. You watch Vosh for one, for two,
First L,
for two.
A red flag.
I don't give a shit. I just don't give a shit. Like the social credit thing, like I'm not being told the full truth on that by anybody who is reporting on it here in the United States. No. B, I don't give a shit because we have a worse thing here. It's called a credit score. It is about how if you are poor, you should have no access to anything that could help you not be poor. That's, I mean, it's literally a thing that locks you out of economic progress.
Low balance fees.
Yeah. It's literally like, is your purchasing power not sufficient to survive? Well, we're going to make life even worse for you.
Well, if your purchasing power isn't high enough, you can't live in this neighborhood. What is that? Is that a non-social credit score? Does that have nothing to do with your social position in society? Does that have nothing to do with who you're around and who you can collaborate with? Because let's say your credit score is dog shit. You're going to live in a poor area. You're going to have a higher likelihood of being plugged into some sort of drug trade or some sort of illicit activity that makes you some kind of money. And, what is that? How is that just like something that's not a social credit score? Like, how do people not make that connection? And the thing is I run the risk of saying those people are dumb. And it's not that they're dumb. They are not dumb. No person here is dumb until they get aggressive with me. And then I'm happy to call them dumb or any other number of words that YouTube doesn't like. But before I get to that point, I don't assume anybody's dumb. Like the thing is, a lot of these people are operating on a lack of information, and that's not being dumb. That's an understanding that's built on faulty information, and that's not their fault, in my opinion. Does that mean like you're not stuck? Like to use the line, I'm not stuck in here with you, you're stuck in here with me. I feel like we're kind of with that person a lot of the time. Like you're stuck in here with me. Like all of these people think you're stuck in here with me. You got to deal with my problems. And I guess, yes, I would like to deal with your problems, but you have to actually listen to anything that I have to say. And you have to understand that when I make a comparison to this side and that side, and I'm saying that both sides are bad in some way. In this case, like, do I like what social credit sounds like? No, I don't. I don't like it. But we have that already, and it's worse. So
They're saying
both
that,
sides are
like,
bad.
like those same kind of like justifications. Like, I mean, where there's a whole abandoned Harris movement. I mean, Jill is actually like 20 points up in like Michigan, but
Really,
something, yeah.
that's my home state. I mean, I don't talk with anybody from Michigan that would have a propensity to support Jill Stein. Like, I was a Bernie supporter when I lived in Michigan, and even Bernie supporters were like, "Nah, I don't know Jill Stein," you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even necessarily the support of like Jill Stein. It's mostly just like not rewarding your vote to an actual genocider. Like, there's a whole, we're less than 28 days away from the election. There's a whole argument right now based on like, at least on like the pro-Palestine like side of, Twitter or social media, is like, do you vote for Harris? Is that damage control, or is that like? And there's always this primary focus on like, oh, but Trump is going to be worse on domestic issues. Trump is going to be worse for gay people or trans people, and our rights matter, and it's above all the babies that are being slaughtered over there. And
Yeah.
Here's what I don't get. Here's what I really don't get about this whole like X would be worse thing. Both of these sides run the same racket every 4 to 8 years. One of them, they both played against one another. To Trump supporters right now, Harris taking over means an end to the country, regardless of her being the current VP with Yogurt Brain at the helm. And the country hasn't ended, it's gotten worse, but if you look at the last fucking couple of decades, it's just been one of these. A very steady, gradual decline. And then you got the Trump...
I'm sorry, I'm laughing about Yogurt Brain, and I have to say something. That's Yogurt Brain is a good one. I haven't heard that one personally.
Yogurt Brain and Soup Head are my go-tos. Just like tilt your head, let the Campbells flow out. But like the thing is,
it's not Campbell's. My soup comes from the Gordon Ramsay restaurants. It's the best soup out there. Sorry, but no, not Campbell's.
Thank you. It's chunky. I don't do a good Trump, but yeah, both sides that think that if the other side wins, it's the end of democracy and all that. And you got both sides doing the same thing with the flowery promises. They're like, oh, well, Trump's the lesser evil. No, Harris is the lesser evil. But Trump's going to do all this. Oh, but Harris is going to do all that. And then they get in office. They break all their promises. Both sides do this constantly. Nothing fundamentally changes. That's the illusion that people are, I feel at least, are really the illusion that people buy into. It's like, it's not that like there's ever like a horrible thing that happens. The problem is that just status quo is maintained. Like business as usual keeps going on, and not enough people realize like that's the problem. The problem is business as usual.
Absolutely.
Because your material conditions right now is business as usual, and you should be pissed off about that. Not like this constant... I had a theory a while ago that the whole like World Economic Forum Great Reset thing was like a psyop to convert revolutionary fervor into like reactionary energy, because you're taking like status quo and you're presenting something like way scarier, like you're gonna eat the bugs and live in a pod, and they're gonna use you for like fuel. I think I just actually copied Brave New World. Anyway, but like they're presenting something way scarier, so they get people to cling to the status quo. But the real thing, you should be upset about how business as usual is going, not like how dark and scary the future can be, because it's like it's dark and scary right now.
Well, and the thing is, business as usual is a cycle of decay. That's the other thing. Like, while they may tell us that the numbers go up, the problem is that the numbers are something that they report to us, A, and B, the numbers are also dependent on other numbers that people don't understand, like inflation, for instance. Inflation is not something that a normal person understands. They understand price go up, but they don't understand inflation. Now, price go up is a result of the falling rate of profit. They have to increase prices in order to maintain profit. But at the same time, when you have less people who are able to afford something, you have to produce more of it to produce profit. What you end up doing is exactly what's happening. is this general decay of quality of life. The thing is, that is the status quo. It's always going to be the status quo in monopoly imperial capitalism. It's never going to change. You have people who are saying like it's neo-feudalism or we're in some new thing, and it's like, no, we have new things happening in the world, sure, but this all comes back to the core contradiction of the socialization of production with the private appropriation of product and profit. It creates a mathematical impossibility to maintain the to maintain the status quo. Now, when I say to maintain the status quo, there I'm saying something different than what we're saying, sort of colloquially here. To maintain an equilibrium where even we maintain the same numbers or profits, that's not physically possible with the way that socialized production's appropriation of product and profit is. It's literally impossible because you have one class that takes a fraction of the value of something, and the other class that takes from that class what is left, the surplus, the profit. That will always make an upward transfer of wealth, which will always make it impossible for the underclass to continually purchase the things that would create equilibrium. Now, this doesn't happen straightforwardly. It happens in different sectors, different industries. It goes on sort of non-linearly, but it's also the thing that continually happens. It's always going to be that. And that's the status quo. And that's why our lives are becoming less and less good as they say numbers go up. Sure, numbers can go up, but like, who's getting the profit? Is it me? No, it's not. I'm not getting the profit. You are getting the profit, capitalists. And as you do that, you are actually shooting yourselves in the foot because you depend on us in order to buy the things. And eventually you're going to create a situation where we can't buy the things. That's the problem of capitalism. It's not that it's unfair or mean or greedy or any of that shit. It's that it's a mathematical impossibility to create equilibrium. That's the problem. And that's the status quo. And that's the ongoing thing that they work to protect. And it's the thing that requires human nature in order to prop up. It's the thing that requires these ideologies, this leftism, in which divides people from rightism. If these people are arguing about who is good and who is bad, and it's not pointing over class lines, it's pointing over ideological lines. And as we point over ideological lines, we're never getting close to the real problem, which is that mathematical contradiction, which will always doom us to make things decay. It may be slow. It may be like it's happened over the 40 years I've been alive as opposed to instantaneously, but things are infinitely worse now than when I was born. A company could start something and make a profit pretty easily. Now you have such a saturation of the market. You have so many people making so many cheap products, and yet they can't make any money off of them because they can't sell them. There's no demand for them. They can't market the demand into existence because nobody has the money to buy shit that they don't absolutely need. And that's the real crisis of capitalism. That's the reason we have to solve that contradiction. And I don't care whether you call it neo-feudalism or whatever a lot of these people talk about. It's a problem of math. And that math is dependent on solving a contradiction. And as long as we're talking about which of our neighbors are the bad guys, we're not going to solve that contradiction because that contradiction is entirely systemic. It's class, it's math. It sucks because this is what we need to organize people along the lines of. This is you talked about Rage Against the War Machine. The organization I'm a part of, the Center for Political Innovation, has been a sponsor of both of the Rage Against the War Machine events, and we are an openly communist organization. A lot of the people involved there are not communists. In fact, most people involved in Rage Against the War Machine are not communists. They were libertarians. There's a lot of apolitical people, and they get up and they talk about imperialism. Like, they may not have the same analysis, materially speaking, of imperialism as us, but they understand, like, this isn't about who is good and who is bad. It's about the fact that there is a world system that is ultimately working to undermine not only the people outside of our country, but the people inside of our country. Like, we're the problem to them, and that's the problem.
How very dialectical of you.
Thank you.
I was also going to make a joke of, like, if only someone wrote about this contradiction, but that was that was a good one.
It's not like we have a whole century or more of material that points directly at that.
Yeah, I mean, The thing is, like, the funny thing I see is that, like, it's to your point when you're like, these people aren't stupid. This information isn't provided to them throughout any of their education. They know nothing about this. Like, they don't understand.
It's not the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
they don't understand, like, these. They're never gonna. Here's the thing. There was no path for me to becoming a Marxist. I had to go and, like, get a machete and hack through the foliage or foliage,
I think it's
foliage,
foliage. Or no,
foliage,
foliage, I think. But I also
foliage. Perfect.
mispronounce things constantly, so
Yeah,
don't take
yeah,
my word on it.
yeah. My brain's spicy, but, like, I had to go find that shit just because of people talking to me and correcting. You know, when I was 20 years old, I had a lot of stupid reactionary kids. They were dumb.
Sure.
I was a shit liberal.
Yeah, I voted
I
for
was still
Obama.
until like at least 2020, I think.
I voted for
Listen.
Obama.
Listen, Trudeau got me the first time. I've admitted it before. He got me the first time with electoral reform because I was like, you know what? Yeah, first past the post is kind of bullshit. I don't think it's democratic. Let's go. And I was still hurting from the death of my hero at the time, a beautiful mustached man by the name of Jack Layton, who I will credit with radicalizing me. But I had to have people, like, counter my arguments, and, like, I basically happened upon this stuff. This information isn't provided to the public, and I don't think that's by accident. But it's like, no, it's not that people are stupid. They're working with what they have. It's just the problem is what they have isn't the full picture. If that makes sense.
The way I got radicalized was in 2011. I was targeted by the media actually for making up a fake girlfriend, but this time that I have spent sorting through that, I was being catfished at the time, and I was also criticizing various online personalities' marketing. And those same personalities, for some reason, found some way to undermine my criticism, which was, hey, there's evidence that this person is in a long distance relationship isn't real. So that means if I paint it like he made that up, if this person made that up, that makes them a bad guy. And so it started with a couple of gossip bloggers who I was feuding with, and then it spread to other, like, much bigger YouTubers like Ray William Johnson, who also did not appreciate my criticism, which was that they were basically taking money out of other YouTubers' pockets in a time where I didn't really understand property, or I would probably disagree with myself on that at this point. Like, I don't really like the content landlording. I'm not a big fan of nowadays, but he didn't like that. Ultimately, I will say I was on the side of smaller people because the grievance I had was the fact that he was using clips from skits and stuff that people were producing, and not those people weren't making money. That's a definite instance of what a lot of these people, and sorry, I'm ADHDing here as well. A lot of the people who argued with me on intellectual property, it's a very similar concern. And again, a lot of those people are coming from a real concern, but then they get to this sort of temporarily embarrassed millionaire thing. Anyway, that's another topic. So anyway, I was like, eventually, once these higher profile YouTubers were spreading this information around, eventually it got into Gawker, which at the time was $100 million company and a pretty large media outlet, a large gossip rag. Really an awful company in my opinion. But they used me. Like, they had no interest in like who I was countering or any of that, but I was perfect content for them because this was something that already had, like, a lot of people in a lot of various YouTubers fandoms that already were mad about this thing. So they were able to tap into that and make a large amount of traffic, and that spread. They got very, very big, and ultimately I didn't understand why the hell that happened, because to me, coming from the other direction, if I were looking out at somebody else who quote unquote made up a girlfriend, even if it was completely true, I would be so uninterested in it. I wouldn't give a shit. I'd be like, all right, fine. What else is going on in the world? Yeah. So my kind of path to Marx was finding the interests, why this shit happened. Like, because I don't think that any of those people legitimately, and I'm saying this about the people who spread it around, I don't think they thought I made up a girlfriend. I think they thought it was a very convenient way of shutting me the hell up and making me uncredible. And to be frank, this is the core of the reason so many people hate me. Well, not recently. I'd say more recently. It's because I told people the same thing that South Park clip that you played at the beginning was telling people. But
that's why they hate us too.
Yeah. But this was the start of people hating me. Like, I would say something and they'd be like, you made up a fake girlfriend, though, so shut the fuck up. And, I mean, that stuff, it was insane for me because I spent literally a decade figuring out what the fuck happened there. And that led me to Marx because it ultimately ended in what was the interest behind pushing this story for each entity involved. Well, for Gawker, at the very top level, there was already an extreme audience for this cancellation. It was already people who were excited to look at content about it. So they had an audience to tap into. Then we go a thing lower. These large YouTube and these large YouTubers. They had this smaller YouTuber who was gaining popularity. I was on Annoying Orange. I was on a lot of other channels that were getting me notoriety, and I was getting millions of views on song parodies. Here's this small person that is slowly getting bigger that might be able to, sway some people away from my camp. I don't like that idea. I don't want somebody discrediting me. I don't want somebody criticizing me. So there's the reason. That's the incentive for them to either believe it or cynically not believe it and spread it around. And then we go a thing lower. I was criticizing this gossip blogger for selling plastic surgery to kids. Like, they were actively sponsored by plastic surgeons in their country, and their audience was primarily teenagers. So I criticized that. And the same thing. Like, shut this person the fuck up. So there's a material interest behind why people would make this up and spread it, or even just misinterpret intentionally things that were going on in my life, because I was being catfished. So I had on two fronts, was just getting blown out the ass,
My
social life and my professional life, both just right in my face.
Yeah. I think the biggest shitstorm I ever caused was on... It was around the time the MAGA communism shit first went down. This one tweet caused the biggest shitstorm I think I've ever had on any social media platform ever. But I just... it was something really simple, like, to all the people who are losing their minds over MAGA communism, and it was just like the Jim from The Office thing with the writing on the board, that meme. It was just like, if you're not ready to organize with people you disagree with, you're not ready to fight a class war. That was the whole thing. Mm-hmm. The fucking meltdown from the left over that, oh my god. I was just like, wait, what do you mean? You guys shouldn't organize along class lines. Wasn't that the thing? Why are you guys yelling at me over this?
Well, I was called a MAGA communist from day one. Like, people were calling me that, and I'm not a MAGA communist. I
actually when that first started rolling around, like, I started like listening to you, like, with that your like original criticisms of it, because you were like one of the only people who were actually like calling it like contradictory, like,
yeah,
it really doesn't make any sense.
No, it's nonsense. It's just attempt to like get this tiniest sliver of the Trump fandom and the online communists who were just like either socially conservative enough or open to alternative economic ideas enough. Like, just grabbing this tiny little fandom. But that's not even the problem I have with MAGA communism. Like, the stated idea of it is the idea that you would want to reach out to people who are not in agreement with you. I completely agree with that, and I think that that's super important. Yeah. But it's also in the way that the left is the emotionally abusive person. It's the same thing, except for further. Like, you go further. You take the idea further. You're just going more. It's quantitative. Like, you go further. What is a thing that we can claim that we care about and that is important to us, but also kind of obsess over just that for a while? And then eventually it got into, a lot of pretty fucked up shit, honestly. There's a lot of bigotry that is embraced pretty openly over there. Yeah. I don't like getting particularly critical of it, because then they start trying to act like I'm just like this big LGBTQ warrior, whereas
that's what we covered it like several times already, like twice. But we talk about it like a lot because it's just a phenomenon that like I actually know people in real life who like are quote unquote like MAGA communists, and like it on its face it doesn't make any sense. I mean, Pasta also like Craig Pasta also like has like a similar criticism where like you're never gonna get a Trumper to like agree with anything that's called communism. That's
Exactly.
I also, Greg, to your point, I also know people in real life who suffer from schizophrenia, and it's really
it's crazy.
bad.
It's like crazy, yeah.
Now, the thing is, like, I feel like it's a bit of a trap. This is just my read on it because it's like
the Fed. He's
the way the left is a trap. It's the same.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, if you look at what they focus on, it's all culture shit.
Yeah,
it's all culture shit. It's just in the other direction.
It's LGBTQ
just as the left,
is like the big gripe. That's the thing.
Yeah,
they hate LGBTQ, but the thing is, they aren't willing to distinguish between LGBTQ as a ideology propagated by the capitalist class versus sexual and gender minorities, who are a legitimate group of people with legitimate grievances and like a legitimate want to just exist in society rather than anything else. Like most people, the people that we see that are quote unquote poisoned, that are LGBTQ, that are high up on the social ladder on social networks or on TV, the representation, and this is another criticism of mine, it's the parameters of what they want non-LGBTQ people or non-sexual and gender minority people to be, or to see, sorry, and what they want that group of people to be. It's model minority shit, and it's meant to piss off a certain demographic, and it's meant to please a certain demographic. And if you aren't part of one of those demographics and you aren't viewing it that way, you're a heretic in some way, and you will be attacked by whoever you're affiliated with. And that's really my problem with that. They obsess over LGBTQ as though it is just the representation of LGBTQ. It's just the representation of sexual and gender minorities. I make a big distinction between queer theory and LGBTQ as an ideology and sexual and gender minorities as a legitimate group of people with legitimate grievances in society and who have the right to live. Like, I don't get too much into my own identity, but like I'm a little what you would call queer, but I don't use that word. I don't talk about those types of things personally because it gets me associated with queer theory and LGBTQ. And there's so much there that is alienating to me personally, that I don't want to be associated with it. I don't want to be arguing for it. I don't like that stuff. It bothers me.
I really just remove myself from the argument altogether.
Yeah, I have done the exact same thing. And this is as far as I've gone in public in quite a while, if I'm completely honest with you. And I do have to say this. I have to get going soon.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. We can wrap it up. But
what would you say is the one like lesson that like to kind of like take away from?
The thing I'm gonna I'm gonna reduce it down to class, guys.
Okay.
It's gonna be a total reduction of everything down to class because that's not really taking the concerns of anybody into account. And that's what I do. I hate everybody, and I just want to talk about class. It's not like every one of these issues springs forward from class or anything. A difference in terms of power, in terms of, the thing is, all of this is a distraction from the fact that it all comes from a differential in the power dynamic. That's where it all comes from. If you want to pretend that like somehow that's different for a different group, you're wrong. Power comes from somewhere, and the reason a certain group has it is specific to where that comes from. It's that simple. And every other little branch in terms of power is downstream of that. It's not upstream, and a lot of people want a lot of other people to believe that it is upstream. A lot of people want people to believe that it's about Jews, or like they just want us all to be queers. It's not that. It's absolutely not that. It's not even close to that. It's those things come from the fact that there is that contradiction I mentioned earlier that makes capitalism mathematically unsustainable at an equilibrium. Like, I mean, you can sustain it by force, but that requires degrowth, whether it be war or the green degrowth that we've been dealing with. The real thing we should care about is that power differential, is that relationship, is that contradiction, and all of this, including the right and the left. And when I say the left, I mean the liberals, I mean the leftists, I mean a lot of people calling themselves communists. They are not talking about, or even, it's not even that they're not talking about, because some of them are talking about this power differential, but they don't really care because none of the shit they do involves it. That it has to. We have to organize along those lines. And that means shit to do with left or right. Like, as far as I'm concerned, we have to completely dissociate from that as a primary concern. Like, if you want to talk about like how Trump is a douchebag sometimes, fine. Like, because he is. But you also have to recognize that Kamala is a douchebag also. Like, they're both imperialists. They're both not going to fundamentally change anything. And they're both going to lie a lot about what they're going to do.
They steal each other's policies.
Yes. I mean, they literally, and, you know, Kamala reposted Joe Biden's policies, which she's acting like a change candidate. They're the same policies, which Joe Biden continued. Whose policies for the most part? Donald Trump's, who continued whose policies for the most part? Barack Obama's, who continued whose policies for the most part? George W. Bush. I mean, it's literally just this line of people that like does something that is aesthetically different, but doesn't really change anything. Like, people need to understand that both sides are bad doesn't automatically mean I'm trying to hide my allegiance to the other side. If you're actually talking materially speaking, there is a side that is good and a side that is bad. I mean, I'm using good and bad colloquially here. I really mean material and immaterial, or material and I don't know what the other word that, I guess, material and idealist. Like, idealism, this is all in the realm of idealism. Left and right is all in the realm of idealism. It doesn't matter, like, if you say, like, this ideal that we need in the world that would be progressive, that would change things for the better, that would require class politics. Well, all right, but you're in a group of people that doesn't primarily, on any material basis, need to say anything about class in order to be what it is. That's the problem. Like, in order to be something that changes anything, we need to understand power. And if we don't, we're not going to get anywhere. And just, I mean, that sounds reductive, but it's really not, because understanding power is somewhat complex. Like, all of these things, all of these concerns, a version of every concern you hear about racism, about bigotry against trans people, or bigotry against gay people, or bigotry against, you know, any group of brown people or foreigners or any of that, a version of that concern is real. It's maybe not the one you see because, again, representation, but a version of that is real. It may not be as serious as the concern that you're being shown. It may not be even actually that close to it, but a version of it exists and it is real. It's just that that's not the primary problem, and it never will be. We have to concern ourselves with the primary problem, which is that of power. And that's the takeaway. That's always going to be. You know what? I'm never going to put something out that's not the takeaway, in fact.
What do you got working on? Do you have anything that you're...
I'm just working on getting the main channel stuff moving again for now, before I sort of nail down what the next documentary is going to be. I also started a band called That Darn Racket, which the pony cover in the documentary is the first song of. So that's the thing I'm doing.
I do like the song covers a lot.
I appreciate it. I think the pony one it's the most feature complete, I guess is the best way to say it. Because my brother, who's an actual music producer who is charted on Billboard, produced it. So it doesn't sound like shit. Like, most of mine sound like shit.
Did you do it for free?
What's that?
Did you have to pay him?
I had to pay him.
All right.
I didn't have to pay him as much as somebody else would have to pay him, though.
Okay.
Let's be very clear about that.
Okay.
I don't have the money that it would cost to pay him like a real like artist.
Yeah.
Also, I'm his brother, so I'm very lucky in that regard.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So it's nepotism, but it's whatever.
Okay. Well,
It's nepotism, but it's whatever. All right, sure.
That's the name of the next documentary. It's nepotism, but it's whatever.
I know the sibling relationship. I know.
Yeah. But I appreciate you guys for having me on. Like, this was a blast. I would love to do this again as anytime you would be open to it. This is great.
Yeah. That's awesome.
No, totally. We could just
We're gonna stay in touch, and for
Yeah,
anyone else
absolutely.
watching, you wanna drop some user or like tags or whatever, like
On
they can find
YouTube, you can find my sort of like shorter, like I'm discussing a simple, well, not a simple, but a single topic, and I'm trying to keep my scope as small as I possibly can, so I don't end up working for a month or 3 months or 8 months on a video. That's youtube.com/@Peter or youtube.com/Peter Coffin. My documentary channel is youtube.com/@ImportantDs, as in the letter D and an S after it, like docs. It's a word abbreviation. I don't know why I'm explaining abbreviations. I realize that's absurd. But also you can find me on Twitter @Peter Coffin. Those are my 3 primary things. I do other things, but like I don't think that they're worth talking about. Other than you can find me at That Darn Racket on Twitter and on YouTube. So, yeah.
I'm gonna start following that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, there's a lot more to come with that. The covers, I have a few more covers, and I have some songs that are real songs. But I mean, it's also for somebody who's interested in Marxism, it is not a project that they would care about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, either way, I'm just gonna put it out there. I think everybody needs to see this documentary, not just like communists or Marxists. I think everybody across the aisle should.
I've gotten
check
a lot of
this out.
feedback from people who like say, I normally hate communists, but I don't. I actually thought this was like there's. I've posted a couple of instances of that. It's been getting a really good response, and I'm really appreciating people's input.
Yeah, no, it's I feel like you touch on a central problem that we really, really need to get over, which is why I kept telling people this is an important documentary that you need to fucking watch.
I mean, I named the series that for a reason.
Yeah. Important D's.
Yeah.
Important D's. I'm not going to say it.
No,
but
I kind of invite it intentionally with that. Obviously, it's called Very Important Documentaries, but I abbreviate it. I'm like, this is going to make people think that.
yeah. No, it's great. But yeah, I feel like this is a problem that we really need to solve, because I don't want to spend I don't know about you guys. I don't want to spend the rest of my life fighting these stupid ideological wars while like we slowly turn into, as Whitney Webb would put it, retarded goblins that are going to eat bugs. I think she referred to.
I think she's correct. I think
we can't even respond to. We can't even respond to a fucking hurricane now.
No.
The response to Katrina was better. I'm telling you.
Absolutely. Like, and I hate to say, like, you know, Katrina. I don't want people to think I think that Katrina was good, but wow,
no, it wasn't good.
It is so much worse now. It is so much worse now. It's just
it's only getting worse.
Yeah. But again, guys, thanks a ton. I really, this was a great conversation. I love, like,
it's very riveting.
I like being able to throw the humor around a little more because I go on.
You got ADHD too. So.
Yeah, no, it's detected.
It's never not detected, Greg. It's the most detectable thing in the world. You hear a knock in the corner, and all of a sudden you stop mid-sentence and just squirrel over there for a couple minutes. Like nobody can't. Anytime, I don't know about you guys, anytime I've been like, I have ADHD, there's only one response I get from people. I know.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I get it too. I love it. See, you can detect the easiest tell is when you start saying something and then you say, you know, like when, and then you say something that doesn't sound like what you would say, you know, like when. It's like you just start talking about something and then it takes about an hour, but you do get back to, you know, like when. That's the biggest
our whole fucking podcast.
I mean, I did that twice in this one. Like, I had to work really hard on one of them to even remember what I was talking about.
Yeah, that's the worst, because like we do that all the time where we'll be covering a topic and then it just veers like there's two veers off the cliff.
I'll tell you the biggest problem is that with Marxism, it's all related. Like it genuinely is all related. So it's very easy to get lost in the sauce, so to speak. It's
Mhm.
very easy to be like, well, it's like this because this other thing that I can tell you everything about as if I'm obsessed with it like a TV show. But yeah, I should probably stop. This is another symptom of ADHD. You continue talking when you've already been like, I should stop talking.
No, that's the best one. I remember I had God, I was on one show and I'm like, all right, well, thanks everybody for having me. And then someone gets in like just a little thing, and I'm like, shit, don't take the bait, don't take the bait. Oh, I'm going in. Hour later, I'm like, well, bye. Like, you're just like, what did I do for now? What were you talking about? Greenland sharks? What the fuck was that?
It's true. It's very true. But, this time I'm going to say it and I'm going to be serious about it.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you guys. Again, had a blast. But I do have to go. And I hope you guys, whatever you do next week, I'll definitely be paying attention. This is a great show.
Awesome.
For sure, man. We'll definitely have to have you back to complain about whatever bullshit's going to happen next week, because we know it's always a new thing these days.
And yet, it's always the same thing.
Yeah. All right, man. Well,
have a good one,
thanks
guys.
so much.
Peace out.
Peter Coffin, everybody.
Peter Coffin, thank you. That was a pleasant conversation. We
that was
time with our guests. We have fun. All right.
That was super fun. Everybody, please check out.
I
his.
linked the documentary in the chat.
Yeah,
go watch
please.
it. No matter even what your ideology is, you should watch it. Honestly.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter. It's just, regardless of your ideology, here's the thing: you should be focusing. Yes, you should be focusing on your material conditions and not these endless fucking culture battles, because they never go anywhere. I'll provide an example, okay? And again, I consider myself an ally to trans people. I have trans friends. I use the pronouns. I'm not one of the evil.
I don't give a shit.
I'm not one of the evil.
That's not happening on a large scale. It's
Yeah,
not.
I'm not one of the evil whatever people. Okay, but if you guys remember, the fight used to be about pronouns. There was two sides going to war over pronouns. And then everybody kind of was just okay with it, right? It started showing up on job applications. Everybody's like, whatever, yeah. Nobody cared. Then the goalposts moved to bathrooms, and then everybody fought over bathrooms until I said something on Twitter to the effect of, why don't you just do unisex bathrooms? Shut the fuck up. Who cares? And nobody had an argument against it. So I really won that battle, I think. And from there, now it's kids, little Timmy, he plays with Barbies. We got to put him on drugs. And this is never going to end. There's always...
I really don't.
There's
care
always
about
gonna
any of it. I don't give a shit what you decide to do, as long as you're over 18. But as soon as as soon as you get the kids involved, then I'm starting to have, because then you don't have a consensual procedure happening. But even that, even me having a problem with that, whatever small issue that is, I don't prioritize that at all over the economy, over healthcare, or foreign policy.
You should never prioritize it over class, because at the end of the day, listen, whatever ideological battle you're fighting, those people also have material conditions. They also need to pay their rent. They also need to afford groceries. These are things these people, however oppressed they may seem, also have to do. So that's why you should prioritize this shit. Prioritize material conditions. And in addition to that too, it's to your point, even okay, let's say we magically agree on how we should proceed with minors who are gender dysphoric. Let's say we all agree. I guarantee you next week there's going to be another thing that everybody's fucking fighting over, because there always is another cultural thing. There's always going to be another cultural battle to fight. And if people spend all of their energy and time, like BreadTube does, fighting over these things, we never fucking get anything done. And while that happens, the capitalist class just slowly tightens its grip. You're seeing it. You're seeing the censorship. we are seeing a slow trundle towards fascism. You're seeing all this, and while everybody's distracted and scratching each other's eyes out over shit, we're seeing this just gradually progress. So
you talk about that with the hurricane. The response to Hurricane Katrina was way better, and which was already bad. It was already bad enough, but what's happening now with the response to Hurricane Helene, like just to contextualize it, is way, way worse. Mm-hmm. And it's only like 10 years later. It's only been 10 years. So imagine what's going to happen in 2030, 2040.
We're going to die. We're going to be dead. We're going to be dead.
Just be dead.
We're going to be dead.
Let's move on because I gotta get going. I gotta take a shit. But I do want to quickly, I do believe INN News covered this yesterday. Reefing Colin. But yeah, Gray Zone affiliated journalist. He also works for Rebel News. He's mostly independent. But Jeremy Loffredo, you've probably seen his work before on X or YouTube or Twitter. I mean, he often writes for the Gray Zone. But him, along with 9 other journalists, were beaten and taken to a prison. He's detained. He's in jail. No one knows where he is right now. No one knows what's happening to him right now. They could be torturing him right now. We have no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked.
And so far, no, there's no comment. So this is the crazy part. Where did I see this? Continue talking. Sorry.
It's this whole mess is fucked, but it's completely like I wasn't surprised when I saw this. The people need to understand. I said this today. The biggest, because a lot of people talk about the situation with Israel, and they're like, it's so weird that people who were victim to a genocide, like that state is now doing a genocide. And I just basically said, the takeaway here is that fascism does not have a race and it doesn't have a creed. That's the takeaway. And what we're seeing right now with this is fascism. This is, if there's a third world war, I'm calling it right here. If there's a third world war, it is going to be over this. What happened with Hitler in the Third Reich, a third world war is going to be over this. You might not get told it was on your television screen, but the sort of shit we're seeing where the fascists are literally taking journalists and imprisoning them.
And guys, this also happened the same day. There was an Israeli citizen within UK. He was posing as a UK freelance journalist. He's working for the Mossad. And he's in Lebanon. Lebanon intelligence caught this guy, and they deported him to the U.S.
Yep.
And the State Department has nothing to say about this. The State Department has nothing to say. They haven't said a word. And apparently, you can't call the U.S. State Department. They're saying that you need to be a family member or like related to Jeremy in order to like call the U.S. State Department. So you have to refer to the U.S. Embassy in Israel. And who knows what they're going to say? So right now, a little breaking news. So for reporting on the Iranian missiles, 28, he's my age. He's arrested by police. Attack launched by Iran. The charges against him include aiding the enemy during wartime. So providing geopolitical news is now aiding the enemy.
Yeah.
Diplomatic concerns between Israel and the U.S. and his status as a foreign journalist represents the U.S. Embassy intended the Jerusalem Magistrates Court for hearing on request for the police to extend his detention. He published the information openly and fully without attempting to hide anything. If this information constitutes aiding the enemy, many other journalists in Israel, including Israeli reporters, all should also be arrested, which the attorney said. And apparently it's
Jeremy Loffredo for the Gray Zone in Israel, where last night Iran fired over 200 ballistic missiles in retaliation for the assassinations of Lebanese and Iranian political and military leadership. Since the missile strikes, Israeli authorities have attempted to downplay the significance of the attacks, censor the locations of missile impacts from media publication, and claim that Iran was targeting Israeli civilians. What I saw today, here in Israel, is clear evidence that Iran was targeting the same Israeli intelligence and military infrastructure that's been used over the past year to carry out brutal assassinations and attacks.
So you see, he was in Israel, and now this is a little bit of breaking news. This is happening right now. He could be facing the death penalty. They might try to kill him. This is breaking news from Cliff Karenberg.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, everyone, but we've had a terrible update in the case of Jeremy Loffredo. Jeremy is a 28-year-old US citizen and independent journalist who 2 days ago was arrested by Israeli military officers while crossing a checkpoint in the illegally occupied West Bank. He has been held in an Israeli dungeon ever since. At a hearing earlier today, he has been formally charged with aiding the enemy during wartime and providing information to the enemy. This is despite, as his attorney made clear at the hearing, a spy would never have acted so publicly and transparently. Jeremy has done nothing wrong. These are allegations which can result in life imprisonment or the death penalty. This is really, really serious and grave. Earlier this year, a member of Netanyahu's ruling Likud party made similar allegations against the Jewish director of a local Israeli NGO called Bat Shalom, which documents human rights abuses by the Israeli government towards Palestinians. This is an independent journalist facing the rest of his life in a vile Israeli dungeon where Palestinian prisoners are routinely tortured and subject to violent rape by their captors, often for crimes like throwing a stone at an occupation tank, tearing through their village. And I might add that the story of the charges against Jeremy was broken by this website called Ynet, and it noted that Jeremy's arrest had raised concerns of a potential international incident between Israel and the US because Jeremy is a US citizen. Well, let's make that international incident happen. There's no time to waste. Jeremy is incarcerated. We are not. So act accordingly. Bombard your elected representatives with emails, bombard the State Department with phone calls, contact the local US embassy in Israel, try and get the mainstream media to cover this because we need to get word out and we need to get Jeremy out as soon as possible.
Yeah, guys.
Yeah. This is the price to tie this all together. This is what happens when we don't organize and we don't stand up against actual fascism, and instead we let these pointless cultural or ideological battles distract us. We need to stand against this. There needs to be actual disruption of capital.
I can't wait to hear what Matt Miller has to say tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys,
This is
this is a pretty good stream. That's all I pretty much had for today. But yeah, free Jeremy Loffredo. Are you cool with just ending it here? We're just gonna.
I was gonna talk about myself for about an hour, but
Okay, if you want to.
no, I'm kidding. Yeah, I got a hard.
We're coming up.
I got a hard stop at 8:30. So yeah, this is a good time to wrap it.
Yeah. Free Loffredo. Countess Mercury. You think Countess Mercury is taking the day off? I guess we'll find out. But Yep. Thanks for everyone for checking us out. Thanks for you can rewind to see the interview. We had a very long discussion, longer than intended. Actually, it was pretty good, pretty fun time. But yeah, guys, check out the network. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, do what you can.